Welcome to Beyond Accidentals podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Petralis, and we are here for our sixth episode, and we are really excited for our guest today. A few weeks back, we had on Matt Galusi, the head girls lacrosse coach at Melrose High School, and at the beginning of his episode, he talked about his roots in Medford and starting the program in Medford. And, there was a coach that was a transition between Matt and this current guest that I'm having on, but basically Matt kind of handed the reins over of his program to Meghan Olsen, who's our guest today. And she's done great things. She's done great things in the community. She teaches in the city of Medford, the same city that I happen to teach in. I've heard nothing but great things about her. And I was really excited that she was interested in coming on the podcast and really talking about her program and who she is as a person. And so we're really excited to have on a young coach, someone who has a lot of energy, that's fired up, and is looking to do great things and really carrying that torch that Matt passed on to her. Ladies and gentlemen, Meghan Olsen.
Hey, Anthony. Thanks for the introduction. I have to throw a shout out to Matt Galusi as well. I did check out his podcast, and I got to let him know that Medford Girls Lacrosse is in good hands, and I promise to take care of it and never forget where it came from. So thanks for starting the program, and thanks for letting me take over.
Yeah, I was really excited afterwards. He was speaking really nicely about you, and then through the city, like hearing you as a teacher in Medford, and we didn't really know each other too well, but I heard nothing but great things, and it was great. We kind of reached out to each other, and here you are. So we're lucky to have you on today, and really excited to hear what you have to talk about, some of the great things that you are doing and you've currently already done in the city of Medford for girls lacrosse. So let's talk about it a little bit. Give us a little background about, who you are, your history and background in lacrosse, and where you're at now.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll start by saying right now I'm the 7th grade middle school math teacher at the McGlynn Middle School. And along with that, I'm the varsity girls lacrosse coach, as you know. This past year, I also coached the middle school girls basketball team. And for the past 3 years, I've been the middle school CCSR advisor. So we're definitely going to talk about that a little bit later. But with my lacrosse career, I started playing lacrosse in 5th grade. It carried me to playing through Arlington Youth. And then I went to Meghan High School. And then I continued playing at Assumption College in Worcester, Massachusetts.
So you have a pretty extensive background in girls lacrosse, and you really understand the game really well. So kind of a cool story. So you played at Assumption, and then you had mentioned that you played at Meghan High School. And when you got out of college, the first job you took was as an assistant coach at Meghan High School. But who was the head coach of the team?
Yeah, head coach. Gotta shout out my dad for that one. But it's a funny story, actually. So my freshman year of high school, we didn't have a girls lacrosse coach at Meghan, and my dad had been the Arlington High freshman girls coach for the past 10 years. And my athletic director was just going to coach, didn't know anything about girls lacrosse, and my dad volunteered to step up because he wanted to give me the coaching experience that he thought I deserved at the time. And we definitely had a lot of fun with that, him being my coach. And then, like you mentioned, I graduated college and I was getting my master's and my first year teaching, and I ended up assistant coaching for my dad at Meghan. And comes even more full circle when I accepted this job at Medford High, and what do you know, I got to play Meghan twice. So played for my dad, coached with my dad, and now I'm playing against my dad.
So I have to ask, what is the lifetime record against one another?
The lifetime record is a 2-0 Medford.
So, oh, wow.
Surprisingly, my first season, it was our only 2 wins versus my dad, and it made for a funny Easter.
But you know what? For your dad to compete against you and to coach against you when he's taught you the game, and now to kind of see his work in action. I mean, that's really special. That's real cool. And
yeah.
I know you mentioned he coached football in Arlington too. We definitely crossed paths, I'm sure, at some point. I know maybe the reins of, I think you said he was under Dan Hirsch when I was with Serge. Yeah. We definitely probably have met each other and have seen each other before, but very cool. So, talk about the process. You worked as a year under your dad. Obviously, lacrosse is in your background. It's in your family. And now this opportunity opens up at Medford High School. Walk us through the process a little bit, especially for a younger coach. I know you're 25 years old, and that's a young head coach that's getting a program at a young age, and you're really having the ability to mold it. So talk about the interview process for maybe these younger people, these younger coaches that are listening, to kind of hear what you have to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I think along with having that assistant coaching experience, I think getting my master's right out of college kind of set me above some other people that were interviewing the same jobs as I was. I have my special ed license, middle school math license, and an elementary license. And I know that made me stand out when I applied for this job in Medford. Initially, I was in Groton Dunstable, so I was commuting about an hour. And I wasn't able to put the time and energy into coaching that I always knew I wanted to do. So one day, Nick Tucci called me out of the blue. It was actually the 4th of July weekend. I think it was right before the 4th of July or right after, and said, "Hey, Dave Kuzmetz, I'm a 6th grade math teacher who I've known for 10 years, doing camp counselor in Arlington, handed me your resume, and I think we have a job opening for you." So I went into that interview not really knowing it was a brand new math intervention position at the McGlynn. I didn't know much about Medford other than I used to play them in sports, and I grew up down the street in Arlington. He said to me, "So I see you played lacrosse in college." I was a big baseball player. I came to Medford. I started coaching baseball. I hear that there's an opening at the high school for girls lacrosse varsity head coach, and I was like, sold. Can I sign the papers now? Like, this is a dream come true. You got to teach. I'm the head coach. At the time, I was 23 when he was offering me this position. I'm like, wow, this is exactly what I wanted and what I was going for. So I sat down with Bobby Maloney and DeLeva, and they asked me a few questions and said, "It's yours. Who do you want to be your assistant coach?" And I was like, what? I got to choose who my assistant coach is? Picked one of my childhood best friends, Mary Roach. Her and I grew up playing together, Arlington Youth, and we've, for the past 2.5 years, have had a blast coaching together. And it's really cool because we can say that we started playing together in 5th grade, and here we are.
Yeah. And that's great. You walk into a situation that, maybe, I don't know how much you knew about the program, but obviously had a coach for a real long time. Like I said, someone we had on just a few weeks back, and, and I know there was a transition year in between, but, you're invested in the city, right? You're teaching in the city. You have, people that, and you're able to kind of start the program the way that you want. You had mentioned, your first year, I know it went a little rough. You had mentioned kind of only a few wins, but talk about, your first order of business when you got the head coaching job and you accepted it and signed, the contract. What was your first, real goals or real things that you wanted to get out there and start doing right away to kind of get your team ready for the season?
Yeah, absolutely. So I know that when Galusi was the coach, they were playing in the GBL, and the year before myself and my first year, we were playing in the NEC, and we were playing big schools like Marblehead and Winchester, and it was definitely some tough competition with programs that have been thriving for years. And there was a transition year between Matt and myself where we lost a bunch of seniors, talented seniors, and I think the season before kind of made their heads pulled down a little bit as opposed to holding them up high. So a couple things that when I came in, I wanted to make sure that commitment was the number one expectation, that these girls were showing up before practice started. They were working their butts off during practice, after practice, putting time and energy in outside of practice because they loved the game and they loved the team and they wanted to do well. Along with that, I know that years ago, Medford Girls Lacrosse used to have a big youth program. And unfortunately, over the past couple of years, I had heard that it died down a little bit. Right when I got the coaching job and it became known, I started getting emails from parents that were in 7th and 8th grade, like, there's no youth team. Like, what should we do? Like, some people are playing in Charlestown. And I was like, no. We need to bring them back to Medford. Like, I want them to be proud to be playing for Medford. And I want them to come to Medford High and be proud that they're playing girls lacrosse for Medford. So started some youth clinics right away, got the girls involved, and we hit the ground running.
And that's great. I think that's always a way to, especially in any, city of town. I've always coached a Catholic school. And so, you kind of get year to year different kids and you don't really know the crop that's coming in. But being in a city of town that you have that youth program where you're trying to rebuild that youth program is really important, because I know coaches that I've talked to about having big youth programs in any sport, it's the lingo, it's the language, it's maybe how you run your offense or how you run your defense, just terms that they can start getting familiar with. So the time they get up to high school, you're not necessarily teaching that because that's been implemented in youth, now for some time, and that terminology is there. But let's talk about, and you mentioned, getting girls involved and getting the team involved with the youth program. Let's talk about like captains and leadership. How do you take over a program and then figure out right away who your leaders are and who are the people that you want to lead this team as far as electing maybe captains go?
Yeah. It's actually interesting. For my first year coming in, they had already elected 2 captains. And I've always liked having 2 senior captains and 1 junior captain, so that the junior captain kind of learns the ropes a little bit, holds the underclassmen together, and then has that year under her belt for the next year to be that much of a stronger captain as a senior. So when I came in, there were 2 captains, both seniors, and I didn't know any of the girls yet. My assistant coach and I kind of gave them some time to prove themselves as captains. I told them that I could easily take it away as much as I didn't want to, but because I was a new coach and I wanted to have that authority and make sure that I had 2 of the best girls leading my team. And down the road, we had a couple weeks in, we had 3 senior captains and 1 junior captain. There was a girl who was a captain that I believe that I kind of molded her into being a leader. I think she was lacking that before. She was an unbelievable lacrosse player, but I think I kind of like lit a fire under her and inspired her to be a better leader on the team. And with that, I granted her captainship. So I think that is just one example of the expectations that myself and my assistant coach had as we came in. Like, what is a leader? What should a captain be?
And I think that's important, right? Because that is the foundation of your program, because that first person or those first group of people that you're choosing, you're hoping that they're laying the cement down and start building it, right? So by having that, I remember my first year coaching, I had some great captains who just, yes, coach, no problem, coach, okay, coach, and led by example. And that's great. And, I think looking at it that way and saying to yourself, I need to make sure that the best people are leading my team, not necessarily the best players, but the best people that are best for this program. So, I'm totally with you on that. And I know we're going to jump into a little bit more of leadership training that you are involved with the city of Medford and the athletic department and everything else. And I think this is mega for your program, but just something that brings the athletics up in the city even more so by doing this. But let's just talk a little bit about your season before that. So obviously first year, you're kind of jumping in. There was a transition coach between you and someone who had run it for a long time. You're playing in a much tougher league that's had girls lacrosse develop for a very long time, strong feeder programs, competing hard, and you're jumping into this newer league with numbers down and, not having as many upperclassmen as there once was. So talk a little bit about maybe some of the tough parts of the season, but also maybe, Meghan, when you noticed the change or the tide turning a little bit, that you're saying, okay, what I set out to do is starting to show.
Yeah, I want to say I noticed it right away. I had 3 or 4 meetings actually, which is it's kind of a lot for an out of season coach. So like leading up to preseason, I had 4 meetings where I set the groundwork. I'm like, this is what you should be doing right now to get ready for the season physically. This is what you should be doing to get ready for the season mentally and academically. Like, I'm sure you can attest to this as well, but being a teacher and a coach, like if you're not doing well in school, you're not playing.
Right.
And I think that's a valuable lesson for them to learn. They came out ready to be conditioned, ready to be better than they were the season before. They were frustrated with their season before, and they were excited to have me, I think, a young, positive coach with a lot of experience and a drive to just lacrosse 24/7. Some of them probably didn't love that, but
Yeah.
I think one game where I really noticed it, and like I mentioned earlier, we went 2-16. We were in a really tough league, and we were coming back to the GBL last season, which is why I'm so disappointed with COVID. But we did play Winchester, historically known for being a powerhouse girls lacrosse team. Coach has been there 10, 15 maybe years since I was in high school and before then. We held them 4-0 at half. So my goalie never played goalie before. She was a softball catcher turned goalie. She did a fantastic job, but that was definitely a struggle not having somebody who played goalie before. She did a great job. And 4-0 at half is pretty big. I think we ended up losing the game 12-1. But 4-0 at half, their coach had them down on the other end of the field at the high school, screaming at them for the way that they were playing or allowing us to hold them to 4-0. And I think I said to the girls that game, I said to the girls at halftime, I was like, I do not care about the score. What matters right now is how hard you guys are playing, how well you're playing together as a team. And that's showing. Like, if we had put a couple goals away, it would have been a much closer game, but it wasn't important. And I wanted the girls to realize that this was a rebuilding year, and what we're looking for them to do is work hard and play together and play well together and enjoy it.
Yeah. And I think that is something big to build off of, because when you ever play a team that is just traditionally very good, and a team can for a half or a part of a game show that they can compete and play with a team like that, now these girls start mentally saying to themselves, yes, we can play with these players. Yes, I can run with these girls from all these big schools and all these teams that we're playing, and we can play teams like Winchester and play tough. So that kind is always a turning point. I feel like that when kids start really buying into systematically what you're putting together and trying to put out there. So let's talk a little bit about the off season, because you had mentioned it. So, you had your first season, and you had your highs and your lows like everybody has in their seasons. What was your message to the girls as far as their off season went? Now, are you a big advocate into, I want my girls playing club lacrosse and I want you playing as much lacrosse as you possibly can from now and until next season? Or are you the type of coach that says, I want you to be competitive and play some other sports? Or do you kind of mix bag it between the two of them?
Yeah, I'd say I'm somewhere in the middle, but I definitely lean towards being a 3-sport athlete. I myself was a 3-sport athlete, and I think there's so much to learn from other coaches and other teammates that's transferable in lacrosse and in other sports. So I encourage the girls, like, play soccer in the fall, run cross country, run track in the winter, play basketball, play hockey. Do something so that you're staying active, you're competing, and you're learning to become a better leader and a better teammate. And I think a lot of the girls on the lacrosse team actually played some other seasons together. And like this past year, we just lost out on, but there was a handful of girls that played basketball together, and they had a great coach, brand new coach from last year. And I was really looking forward to how they meshed during basketball season and how that would transfer over to lacrosse season. So I definitely think, like, play 3 sports in high school. You learn the ropes of high school sports. The commitment and the team spirit is a great experience.
Yeah, and I've always found like other sports, every sport's different. The football world, it's 11 guys in the field, basketball, hockey, it's 5 guys out there, baseball, there's 9. So, it's a different mentality, and there's different types of leadership in every sport. You got to be patient and different. And, in like a basketball game, the final 2 minutes is always like 12, 13 minutes long, right? So it's, there's different mentalities, and there's different types of leadership style, and there's different ways to go about and attacking things. And I feel like, high school sports, the mental aspect of the game is just not talked about as much as it should, because, kids that are mentally tougher and that are mentally prepared and have that IQ to understand situations, those are the kids that are just competitive year round. And sometimes only playing one sport year round you maybe don't gain that other knowledge or those other things that you would, because you're just playing the same sport and facing the same scenario over and over and over again. So I know that you're very big into leadership and building leadership in your program. And I just know through the city of Medford that you put some amazing things together. So talk about your first off season as far as what you did through CCSR. If you could explain that to people too, a little bit, what that is, and then talk about how you implemented that into the sports world, the athletic department for a lot of other high school sports in the city of Medford.
Yeah, absolutely. So CCSR stands for Center for Citizenship and Social Responsibility. It was founded by Rich Trotta, and Michael Skorker is the advisor at the high school. Like I mentioned, I was the advisor at the middle school. But one thing that I'm extremely passionate about is leadership. And a lot of students, and on the lacrosse team too, a lot of high school students were telling me that they didn't find that they could participate in CCSR because practice is after school. And I think CCSR is a great opportunity for students to become leaders and grow as individuals. So I looked for a way to connect it, and we put together these leadership panels like you mentioned. So what that looked like was a couple leaders from the Medford community and beyond, or ties to the Medford community, answering questions and interacting with student athletes at the high school. So the very first one I did, I had Nick Tucci on, I had Mayor Burke at the time, we had Jay Savetti, the Tufts football coach, and we've had a couple different leaders since then. We had Kayla Trainer, who is a U.S. lacrosse player. We had Frankie Roach, Tufts football player.
And then just so people know, Nick Tucci is your principal, but he's also was drafted, I think, by like the Padres, maybe the
Yep,
San Diego
Padre.
Padres. Yeah, yeah. Okay.
And he coached at Medford High baseball for a while there too.
Mm-hmm.
So he has a wealth of knowledge about leadership and athletics, which is exactly what we're calling it. And the big goal was that leadership qualities in athletics are transferable to other areas of your life. And I think Nick is a perfect example of that, or myself and you as well. Like, we were athletes and we learned and we grew, and now we're coaches and teachers and mentors. So all these qualities that you learn. So I think this is a great experience for the student athletes, and they always told me that they were really inspired when they were able to ask questions that they came up with themselves, about, like, how did you become the leader you are today? What's a time where you failed and you learned from it? Some of these questions that they were coming up with it put me on the spot. Like, I was like, I don't know if I have an answer to this right now. You're making me think. But it was a great opportunity for them to learn from people who had ties to Medford, like I mentioned earlier, and were proud to be from Medford, or working in Medford, or had relatives in Medford, to just share their story.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's so great too, like you said, just to get people that have ties in the city, that have success, and that, maybe use athletics as a platform for them to get to that next step of who they are and what they're doing. So, and at such a young age for yourself to put such a big thing together, and I feel like I might have walked in on it a few times. If it was at my school, I think it might have been in the auditorium, that I feel like
Yeah,
I might have peeked in and noticed it. So now I'm putting all the pieces of the puzzle together. So
absolutely.
that's great. But that's awesome. And I know the athletic wing, I know, talk about that a little bit after, you kind of had all these different, platforms of people coming on and speaking and really working with the kids, and the types of questions they were asking, and just the overall involvement of the youth in the community with members of the community. Talk about how that transferred over to the school a little bit.
Yeah, so the panels were kind of like the inspirational piece behind this. And then I challenged the student athletes. I had a handful of girls from the lacrosse team, from the basketball team, the football team, and a couple other athletes. They had to come up with a project after this through CCSR. And 6 students decided that they were going to redesign the athletic hallway at Medford High. And if you've walked down there, it's looking pretty good. They haven't finished it because of COVID, but all the ideas were their own. Everything was hand drawn by student athletes, painted by student athletes. And this was part of a course that they took with Mr. Skorker at the high school. They decided we're going to redesign the athletic hallway because we want to show our pride in being a Medford Mustang. We want to encourage student athletes when they walk down the hallway. And we want to get pumped up when we're walking down the hallway and look to the side and we see our team roster photo, or we see like a Medford Mustang head and different trophies that teams have won or athletes have won and been recognized for over the years. So this was extremely inspiring that they wanted to do this. And Bobby Maloney and Rachel Perry were great. Anything that they needed help with, they got it done for them.
Yeah. And, you know, and I know them both personally, great athletic director, assistant athletic director. And yeah, you know, I was in that hallway probably in May. I had to go actually pick something up. And that was the first thing I noticed. I'm like, wow, this looks a lot different here because I worked there all summer long. So I see that hallway whenever there's a change and notice it, you know? So it's like, when I walked in there, it really did look sharp, and I love the color scheme of it. I thought they did a great job. Yeah, so that was cool to see that you were really connected with that as well. So again, great stuff that you're doing, not only for your program, but also teaching your girls beyond and really trying to kind of call it what you want, but get your roots or get whatever kind of wrapped around all the other programs and really starting to build that leadership aspect and taking your real job. You know, I always say teaching like your real job and coaching your fun job, right? But like taking your real job and how you're involved with kids on a different level and then taking that into the sports world, I think is absolutely amazing. So here's a question that I want to ask you, just because I know your sport's a spring sport, and let's talk about going into year 2. I know spring season was pretty close to when I think, you know, basketball shut down and all sports and the whole world shut down, right? Talk about, you know, how not having a season maybe affected your short-term plans going into your long-term plans as far as where you wanted to take your program next.
Yeah, I was as heartbroken as I think most seniors were and spring athletes were last spring. It was year 2. I felt like I had made my name known. I had made my expectations known with the team. I knew the girls. I knew the incoming freshman class from clinics that we had done. I'd made the schedule for us. So we were playing some teams that we were extremely competitive with. We were back in the GBL and bam, COVID hit. So, I mean, we definitely made progress. But unfortunately, we weren't able to continue to progress. We're kind of at a halt right now. And I think we did a lot of good work before the season with clinics. And like I said, I knew the freshman class coming in because they had come to my clinics. And I knew they were extremely talented. But I was definitely heartbroken for my seniors and for the team in the spring because we were ready. We had been having like Google Classroom discussions and meetings. I know they were doing captains practices. Like, I think it was going to be our season. So it was definitely extremely disappointing, especially as a second year coach coming back into the GBL for a competitive season.
Yeah, where you kind of had a little bit more control of your schedule. You're now switching back to the original league that you were in for many, many years before that. So,
yeah,
you know,
the one Lucy was so successful with.
So, you know, it is obviously there was a lot you were looking forward to, but in that off season too, because that was your first off season, was how much in the world of lacrosse, and I know through the world of football, there we go to conferences and we go to seminars and webinars and all that stuff. Talk about how you educate yourself as a lacrosse coach, you know, especially being a first year coach. How did you then maybe go back to the chalkboard a little bit and say, hey, maybe I got to learn a little bit different or do something a little bit different? Talk about a coach's process for that in lacrosse.
Yeah, definitely. So I know the game like the back of my hand, but coaching is something that you can always learn and grow with. So something that I actually did a lot of is I did some of John Gordon's webinars with Kate LaVille, and she even forwarded me one of her books or a chapter of a book that I read up on, and I think this was helpful for me because after my first season going 2-16, there was definitely times where I was like, am I doing this correctly? Like, what did I do wrong?
Absolutely.
And two of their big messages is just like, one, work ethic, and two, staying positive. And I like to think that I carry these over into how I'm a coach. And I learned a lot of this from my dad too, but staying positive and knowing that there's room to grow always is something that I took a lot from. And then the work ethic piece and just like how to inspire the girls to be better teammates, how to get them to want to stay after practice and shoot a bucket of balls. How to get them to show up early to practice and start working on their stick work before practice even starts. And I definitely got some tricks in the toolbox that I'm ready to use.
Yeah. And I think that's so important, right? You know, I just know my growth in football, going to clinics was such a big thing for me. And, you know, some guys look at it as a weekend away, you know, because we're traveling here or there or whatever, and it is fun. But it really is, you know, you go into it and you learn so much. You just see how coaches do things and you're like, huh, I mean, I don't maybe have the athletes they have that they're showing on film. However, this
Yeah,
could work if I tweak this around a little bit. And you always learn something and you always take it back. So, you know, constantly educate yourself. You're right. As a coach, you're learning so much nonstop. The game changes so much, and the speed of the game and the athleticism of the game just picks up, and you have to educate yourself with it. So it's
definitely.
great that you know, at least you took advantage of it at that point. Talk about this spring, right? Like, you kind of know what you have, right? In the sense of players, but there's a year of them not playing each other or playing in club or even playing other sports. So talk about what you think you have and what you're still really trying to figure out about your team now that you lost a season, right?
Yeah. So the biggest struggle, it seems to like carry with me everywhere is I don't know who my goalie is. So right now we don't have a goalie. We actually like recruited somebody from the basketball team last year who was going to play goalie for us, Shakira, and she would have done a fantastic job. So she graduated, so we're kind of like starting over again. But like I mentioned earlier, I know a lot of the now sophomores, the incoming girls lacrosse players, because they had come to my clinics before. And I know I have a great deal of talent. My seniors are talented. My now juniors are talented. But you're right. I lost almost 15 girls in the past 2 years. So it's really just like the starting lineup and who's going to play what position. That is something that I still need to figure out. So I know I have talent. I know that the girls have work ethic. I know that they are capable of being in shape, and they have they're quick. They have a lot of speed, and they're strong. And I've seen that in other sports, but it's definitely going to be a challenge not playing competitively, not playing sports at all, and definitely not playing lacrosse for over a year.
Yeah, I mean, you're seeing it even, I mean, even now with the NFL on, you're just seeing teams just making so many mistakes and turning the ball over. And it just all comes with not having time to really get rhythm. So I know your season's kind of weird now. Your spring season almost starts when it typically would maybe kind of end, you know, almost in the 4th of July. I think it's like the day before or a couple days before, but
Yeah.
kind of crazy, right? But so let's talk about you a little bit. Talk about your coaching style. You know, so let's say we're going out to a practice, you know, we're heading into week 1 of a game. Talk about how you run your practices. What is kind of your style approach with your players?
Yeah, so one of my favorite things is not to give directions for the first 20 minutes of practice. Um, I think that the captains should be leading the warm up stretches and the warm up stick routine. So I like to kind of just stand there and watch. I'm looking and taking note of who is here early, who had their sticks going before, who's coming from study hall, who's coming from detention, like who's getting dropped off in a car with their friend and just had McDonald's. Like these are the things that I'm just kind of like soaking in the first 20 minutes of practice, because like we talked about earlier, a good leader is a good leader on and off the field. They're going to be the one who's there before practice starts. They're going to be the one encouraging their teammates to get ready and get moving. So that's definitely the first 20 minutes of practice. And then once we get going, I like to do a lot of situational um, situational practices and mini scrimmage likes. So I'm not conditioning the girls the entire time, maybe the last 5-10 minutes, but it's becoming an expectation that you should be doing some physical running, whether it's weightlifting or anything outside of practice, so that during practice we can focus on playing together as a team. And I definitely sneak in some fitness into some drills as well, because it's more game-like that they're running with a stick in their hand and whatnot. But I think I'm pretty laid back in a sense where I like to have fun with the girls as well. And I think that's one of the most important things. And something I learned from my dad is nobody wants to just show up to practice and be yelled at the entire time. Like, go faster, work harder, shoot faster. Like, nobody signed up for that in high school lacrosse, or high school sports in general. They're coming to be competitive, spend time with their friends, grow, have fun. And I think that's something that unfortunately gets taken for granted a lot. So there's definitely always some type of fun drill. And sometimes it might just be like who can balance their stick on their hand for the longest. And I think those are the opportunities where the girls get to laugh together, grow together, and bond as teammates. And that's something that I don't want to take for granted, because a solid team is one that gets along, encourages each other, and works together. And it's what I want to have here in Medford.
Yeah, and I think that you're looking at longevity, right? You're kind of looking at long game and not short game here. So those values of, who you are and what you want your program to be, I think that's great. And is not communicating that first 20 minutes and just saying, okay, leaders lead, and leaders lead from the front, right? So it's putting them in a situation early on to be able to problem solve and work together and communicate. Communication is important. We know in the classroom, and is most even more important communicating on the playing field, no matter what sport it is, so on and so forth. Talk about sacrifices that you make. I mean, you're a young coach, you're running a program, you're off season where people think, oh, you're not coaching, you're free. Sometimes is more your busiest time in a weird way. So talk about how you balance life and, how you make sacrifices for what you're truly passionate about.
Absolutely. I think there's definitely a lot of sacrifices. Like you mentioned, I'm 25, and in a time before COVID, I definitely had a lot more options for plans and going out, hanging out with my friends. But sometimes when you got a 7 a.m. bus ride, you want to be in bed at 8 o'clock on a Friday night. And it's definitely a sacrifice that I am willing to make. I love the relationships that I make with the girls on my team, and I'm encouraging them to go for team dinners, and I'm tagging along for a little bit, making sure that they're enjoying themselves and everything's positive. And I think that takes a lot for a coach, especially my age, to put that amount of energy and time into making sure that the team is bonding well, making sure that I'm on my A game 24/7, and being available to talk to other coaches and about how'd your game go the other day with so and so. We play them next week. It's a commitment to spend 30 minutes on the phone with the coach after dinner, long bus rides, make sure the girls get picked up. But it's definitely worth it.
Yeah.
Definitely exhausting. I always don't tell anybody this, but I always like to take a personal day right before the season starts and then right before it ends, because I need a day to just like catch up on sleep and not be like running from here to there. But
Yeah, and I think that's important. I think we talked about mental toughness, and we talked about games being so mental. I think for a coach too, in order to prepare and to order to get your mindset right, not just in the sport but even teaching. Like personal day is a personal day. It's your day to how to use it. But getting yourself ready. I mean, I had so many years that I run a summer camp, and then summer camp ended on a Friday, and then football starts on a Monday, and then school starts, and it was just like, it was grind time. Like, and you do make a lot of sacrifices, and you make a lot of, decisions of, I'm going to go drive to Braintree to go scout a game on a Friday night because we're playing this team next week. And and I need to live look at them, so there is a lot of traveling, and there's a lot that goes on to it. What's your advice to young coaches that, and listen, you coach as an assistant coach for a year, and then you got a head coaching gig, so you got into it pretty quickly. So what's your advice to young coaches that want to make that jump or want to make that climb and take over a program at a young age and say, hey, this is what you got to do, and this is how you got to do it? Tell us a little bit of advice that you would give for someone like that.
I think the biggest advice, and I think I got it myself, is like the time you put in is what you're gonna get out of it. So I just mentioned a lot about like bus rides and after practice and all of that, but the time is also putting on clinics in the off seasons and growing the program through the youth. That is definitely going to help you in the long run. And I can't wait until the little 5-year-old girls I have now at my clinics are going to be sophomores, juniors on the team. Like, we're going to be fire because they'll have known me for most of their life by then. But I think for a young coach, it's definitely frustrating. And Coach Scary, the guys basketball coach at the high school, he told me, like, your first couple of years, you're going to figure it out. The record doesn't mean anything. It's, are the girls happy? Are the parents happy? Is the school happy? Are you happy? And the wins are going to come. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think that there's always ups and downs in programs, and there's years that you just maybe have the talent, and some years you don't quite have the talent, and the league around you is just better. And so coaching it's such a love-hate thing. There's some years that you lose your mind with it, and then there's some years you just love it. And it's not necessarily about wins or losses, like you said. It's just kind of the kids and the effort that they put into it is a big aspect of it too. So we're going to jump into our final segment, but I just want to say, thank you so much. You gave some real great things. As a young coach, I really think you have your head on your shoulders, and you kind of see, kind of the end game, and where you want to be and how you want to get there. And you understand that there's going to be ups and downs with that, and there's going to be a balance of things going your way and not going your way, but just to kind of keep, lowering the shoulder and fighting your way through. So I'm really excited. I know you're going to do great things. Your reputation in the city kind of speaks for itself, and I'm really excited for you. So we're going to jump into our last segment. It's called our 2-minute drill. So basically, I'm just going to fire some like rapid fire questions at you, like 1 or 2 word answers. I mean, some guests have gone on and just kind of talk, and, so it's kind of ends up turning into whatever, but I'm just going to try to give you as many rapid fire questions as I can. I do get 1 booth review, so I do get to challenge something if, I wanted you to explain it a little bit more, or you might just want it, and I end up giving it to you.
I'm a little nervous.
Yeah, no, it's fun stuff. It's fun stuff for sure. So I'm going to start the clock, and away we go. 2-minute drills on. So favorite jersey number. What's your number?
4.
4.
But I won in high school.
Okay. So I'll ask you this. What win was bigger against your dad, the first one or the second one?
Second one. Senior.
Second one. Okay. So you might have answered this question already in conversation, but I was going to ask you, would you prefer to have a stud goal scorer or a stud goalie?
Goalie, because I need one.
Yeah, I mean, I was like, oh, I had this question geared up. I'm like, all right, and now I know the answer to it. If your team could come out to a theme song this year, what would be the theme song?
Oh. Who let the dogs out?
Okay. Was your first year of coaching way harder than you expected?
No.
No? Okay. I'll throw the red flag on that. I'm going to challenge that. Explain that, because I'm very interested, because you seem like a very calm, cool, and collective person. So I'm not surprised by that answer, but I would love to hear you explain it a little bit more.
I have to say, I had some really fantastic parents that kind of like tooted my horn a little bit. And it was definitely hard coming off of having Galusi there before me, but the girls had a tough transition year in between us, and I had parents that were extremely happy. The girls were happy, and they were just kind of reaffirming that for me. Like, their daughter had never been so excited to play lacrosse like this, and that kind of made me feel like I was doing the right thing.
Yeah, and I think that's important as like especially so in your first year that you like you said you're taking over for somebody who started the program and brought it to a pretty successful point and is continuing to do so in his career. So there's always that pressure. I took over for a coach who coached for over 30 years, and it was like gulp, like so, like oh
Yeah.
man,
Wish
and
I had some more wins, but
yeah, I hear
happy
you.
for
But everyone knows what you're doing and the good things that you're doing, and to kind of hear that as a coach, yeah, it feels good when the parents and kids are happy with what you're doing and you're working them hard and you're putting them through the ringer and you're making them realize and fall in love with something that you're in love with, right? So there are such positives to it. All right, we got a couple more questions. We got a little bit more time. I'll start the clock back up.
All
So
right.
your preferred style game, would you want like a low scoring 3-2 game, or would you prefer to be in a shootout?
Low scoring.
Okay. Um, what would you say is the biggest thing that your father taught you, playing for your father and coaching with your father? What's one thing that you would say that's helped you out with your first year of being a head coach that your dad maybe taught you as a coach, as a player, or just working with him?
If you shoot it really hard, the goalie won't be there next time. Biggest thing with him was definitely balance. I think have your expectations and little goals that you want to achieve, and with the little goals come some bigger goals.
That's great. That's awesome. And you have survived the 2-minute drill. You are good. So again, I really want to thank you for coming on. I was so intrigued when Matt had mentioned you, and then I heard so many great things about you, and it was just like, okay, we need to get her on here. I think you're heading in the right direction with your program, and just stick true to you. My advice would be to you is this: you have a vision, you have an understanding of what you want it to be, and there's going to be rough waters to get there, but you will get there. And so just stick to you and stick to what you believe in, and that's what you got to do to be successful. So I see what you're doing for the city. I see what you're doing for the athletic program, and the program's in great hands. And I really look forward to. I'd love to have you back on the show, maybe before the season or after the season, and talk a little bit about year 2. Well, I guess year 3, but we'll call it 2B with COVID.
Call it a red shirt year.
Yeah, and just to kind of see, just to check in on you and see how everything's going. So we were really lucky to have you. I really thank you for coming on, and good luck with everything.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for doing this and highlighting coaches around the area. I think this is really going to hit the ground, and I'm definitely going to share this and spread it and get coaches pumped up, and appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. I know how hard coaches work. I know how hard ADs work, assistant coaches work, and we're going to be having different segments on throughout. And I have so many guests lined up that are just excited to get on and tell their story. So we're really lucky we have you and had you on. And like I said, you are welcome here any other time you want to be on here down the road.
I'll come back once I get another win in my pocket.
Yeah. And maybe we'll get your dad on here. Maybe it might be the third win, right?
I'll play that any day.
Well, from Beyond X's and O's podcast, I'm Anthony Petralis. Meghan Olsen, thank you so much for coming on, and good luck this season.
Thank you.
All right.